Thank you all for coming. This is my defense, as Dr. Wa announced. And the title of my dissertation is Acquisition of Form Meaning Mapping in L2 Arabic and English Noun Phrases, subtitled A Bidirectional Framework. And this dissertation is submitted to SLAT in L2 Learning Processes as a major and Language Pedagogy as the first minor. And the second is an external minor in MENAS, with a special focus on teaching Arabic as a foreign language. I need first to thank all of them for walking me through the process, because I did like 1 year of data collection starting last summer, continued until 1 month ago. And every single member in the committee has added unique component to the quality of my work. This dissertation comes under applied psycholinguistics as a domain in L2 learning, between brackets of Arabic, because I'm going to talk about applied psycholinguistics in general for the first like 5 minutes and then jump very quick into Arabic. We understand that applied psycholinguistics has established unbreakable bonds between the process of L2 learning and between classroom practices. This is because it started to look into classroom problems that students who are learning a second language or a foreign language are facing, and then begin to think of solutions for those L2 learners. And starting by this framework, when we look at the Arabic second language acquisition research, as Muhammad Hawari described it, it's still parsimonious and sporadic. And for Hawari, it's parsimonious and sporadic because in many other foreign languages, a lot of phenomena have been documented and well studied. But this is not the case in Arabic as a foreign language right now. Given that Arabic, there is a higher demand on Arabic now in the United States as the fastest growing foreign language, according to the Modern Language Association report in 2009. And this actually adds to our burden as second language acquisition people to try to change that case that Hawari described as unsystematic for now. And starting by classroom problems, this research started 3 years ago as an action research. When I started teaching Arabic as a foreign language here and in California State University in Chico, I have noticed a persistent problem in the acquisition of the definite marker in a number of noun phrases. And keeping this in mind, I began to think of a systematic framework to investigate the process of learning the definite marker in a number of noun phrase configurations, and then to see how can we help teachers who are teaching Arabic as a foreign or as a second language. The fact that Arabic and English are classified as plus article languages might make us assume that our students might not have problems with the definite article, because Arabic has the definite marker al-alif wal-lam, and English has the. But actually, when you look into the written pieces of students from elementary into advanced and beyond, you will notice that they have persistent errors in the definite marker. And this is perhaps because the semantics, the meaning of the definite article in Arabic and English is different. It is not the same. And this is the first component when I say form meaning connection or mapping. So it is the meaning of the definite article when it surfaces in a number of noun phrase configurations. What about the previous literature? A lot of people studied the definite article in learning or in teaching Arabic as a foreign language as only one component of many structural features. And here, starting by Raghi Ramuni, 1976, and Salman Al-Ali, 1972, and then Nielsen, 1997, and then Hawari, 2009. But what we can find on all these previous studies, the focus was not on the meaning of the definite article. The focus was on agreement between noun and adjective in noun phrases. And this is a different component of the problems of the definite marker. Because in Arabic, when you have the noun and the adjective, they have to agree in definiteness. But this is not what I'm going to talk about. My focus is different. It is not agreement, it is the semantics or the meaning of the definite article in a number of noun phrase configurations. What about Arabic English learners? If the focus is on English Arabic, why am I investigating the same phenomenon also with Arabic English learners? Because my understanding is, if you want to track a phenomenon, it is not enough to see how it works in one direction. You have to see the same phenomenon by two communities of learners while they are acquiring the same set of structures in two different directions. And this is what I did at least in 2 of my 3 investigations, as we will see in 2 minutes. But actually, when we check previous studies in the Arabic-English direction, you will find research studies are giving us very conflicting reasons. Starting by Naif Kharma, 1982 in Kuwait, he said it seems like we have multiple reasons for these errors. And these reasons fluctuate between overgeneralization, performance issues, L1 transfer, plus the unexplained cases, as he terms this. And then Solmi in 2010 concluded that it seems like we need to set up detailed and systematic comparisons of Arabic and English definite markers, because up till now we don't have a definitive answer about how the process looks like and how we can help teachers to teach these unnoticed features in Arabic and English effectively. And as I said, these studies went only in one direction, but Ekman in 2008 recommended the use of the bidirectional framework because for Ekman it should make us able to identify the directionality of difficulty. Because if you are able to track the same difficulty level or direction, then it should reveal the underlying reasons for the mistakes and should give us insights how the process looks like. But let's start first by the phenomenon that I'm talking about. When you look at the definite marker in Arabic and in English, you find it very complex in each language and when you do a comparison between the 2 languages. Let's start here by very basic comparison between Arabic and English and some of the noun phrases. If you are presenting a singular unique noun phrase like ash-shams, in Arabic and English, they will match in form. By form here, definiteness. Both of them have the definite marker. But when you shift into the abstract singular nouns, when you introduce them into the discourse for the first time, there is a tendency in the English language to use an indefinite singular noun phrase. You see, success makes us happy. You never say, the success makes us happy. But if you are shifting into Arabic, you have to add an-najah yaj'aluna su'ada. It has to surface as a definite marker, with a definite marker. And here, this is a case of mismatch. Also, these cases of matching and mismatches continue to appear in a number of noun phrase configurations. Perhaps one of the most famous is the plural generic nouns when we introduce them into the discourse for the first time. In English, we say children like colors. You never add the definite marker to the word children or to the word colors. They are plural. But in Arabic, to render this configuration, it has to be al-atfal yuhibbuna al-alwan. So you have to add the definite marker here and here. It's interesting because the form here is mismatching, right? Because one of them is definite, one of them is indefinite. But also the meaning is the same because here we are talking about the generic meaning of kids or children, like in colors in general. We are not specifying a specific category of children or a specific category of colors. This is a second case of mismatch. Perhaps the most famous is the idafa construction. Because the idafa construction, as we know, has a canonical configuration in Arabic where only you use the definite marker before the complement, but never before the head. Head and complement here simply N1 and N2. N number 1 and N number 2. But the English language is permissible or tolerant of more than one noun configuration. And when we render all these from English into Arabic, we make many changes in 2 things. Number 1, in the head complement ordering. Sometimes we ask our students to switch if it is not in the of construction, right? And then we ask them not to use the definite marker before the head. You have to use it only before the complement. But when we look into the literature of analyzing the article systems in Arabic and English, we discover another layer of complexity. And perhaps the framework presented by Tanya Ionin at MIT for understanding the definite articles in a number of languages, minus article languages, is very insightful. And here this is a quote or 2 examples from what she said. But to understand what she's saying, she makes a fine-tuned distinction between plus or minus definiteness and plus or minus specificity. And she argues that these two features are independent. The fact that you add a definite article before the NP or before the noun phrase, this does not mean that you are specifying that noun phrase. But this is not only in extended contexts, it can also be within the first sentence. And then we will see now two examples. For starting with this, I'd like to talk to the winner of today's race. Then if you continue it, she's my best friend. This configuration using her annotation is plus definite because here the winner has the definite marker, and it is plus specific because she is her best friend. We know who she is. But you can still use the same configuration, the winner of today's race. But if you continue it, it's still definite, but it's minus specific. So even if you are using two definite configurations, the context itself will give you indication to add the second feature, which is a specificity. But what about, this is for her is context specificity. Is it possible to make use of this framework for understanding what I refer to it as noun phrase specificity when you first introduce noun phrase into the context? The answer, let's try. When you say children like colors, that's minus definite because it does not have any definite articles, and it's minus a specific. We are not talking about a specific category of kids or a specific category of colors. But when you shift into Arabic, it will be the same meaning, but the configuration will be different. For Sorace and Tsimpli, this is a case of interface. This case is a case of interface in Arabic because you have here plus and here you have minus. And learning these interface cases are harder for him, are harder than learning a straightforward configurations, something like this. So if you are starting from English and you are learning Arabic, you are learning an interface configuration. But if you are doing it the other way around, and then you are moving from Arabic into English, this will not be a problem. That's for Sorace. We will see if this hypothesis is true or not. Taking this framework into account, I developed three distinct studies that have been investigated in three distinct articles. And this is a new format in a slant where you develop your dissertation around the three distinct investigations. All of them are related in some sense. There is a thread that combines all of them in one framework. I started to investigate three cases of noun phrases in Arabic and English, two of which are in a bidirectional framework. The first is the plural case, the case like children like colors. This is the first case. The second is singular noun phrases. Singular noun phrases like the case of the sun or the case of success. Success makes us happy. And the third is the nominal phrase, which is the idafa construction. And what I'm going to go over is to discuss a number of hypotheses that have been tested across these three different studies. And then by the end, I'm going to get the three pieces together and develop a number of implications for second language acquisition theory and for second language acquisition from the practical point of view. Let's start by the first investigation. As I just explained, when you are presenting plural noun phrases for the first time in this course, Arabic and English, you will have the same meaning but different form. The cases like children like colors, or lions are dangerous animals, or cars help us nowadays, or big streets are needed in big cities. In all these cases, you are talking about plural noun phrases that carry a generic meaning, but in Arabic, they are definite. In English, they are not. What about if you are specifying the same noun phrase? And to specify a noun phrase, in English and Arabic, we might use the relative clause, الذي or التي. There is a tendency in English, when you introduce the noun phrase, the dog's which, once you mention which, you have to make it specific. There is a tendency in English to use a definite marker. Here, Arabic and English behave in the same way. They are not different. But in this case, they are different. So for the case of the generic meaning, they are different. But for the case of the specific reading, they are the same. Let's keep this in mind because this is related to these two charts. This chart nicely summarizes the big difference between Arabic and English in the generic reading case. Again, here we have the same meaning but different form. This is an interface configuration, because again, you are talking about here the generic meaning of kids or colors, and it carries the definite marker. That's why it's an interface case. But this case is very straightforward. Again, for Sorace, this configuration should be harder. For the specific condition, they are the same. Like the dogs which I saw, or the streets that I lived in or at in France were very clean. Taking this, we started to ask 3 questions for the first investigation. The first is, for low proficiency English Arabic and Arabic English learners, do their responses pattern similarly? And they pattern similarly while they are working on the same set of instruments, the same set of items. So basically you are asking the student who is learning Arabic here and the student who is learning English in Egypt to work on the same items and the same instruments. Question 2 asked about the specific reading. If they are patterning the same here, then the fault transfer hypothesis is supported. The fault transfer basically says when you are learning a second language, you transfer the first language grammatical configurations from L1 into L2, regardless of any interfacing situations. But if they are not patterning similarly, then the interface hypothesis should be supported. But if this is supported, it should be supported here too, right? Because these are the same. And the third question asked about if our students who are learning Arabic as a foreign language are learning English as a foreign language, if they are having issues with the definite marker in plural noun phrases, are they able to recover from this effect? And if yes, after how much of teaching? 1 year, 2 years? At which proficiency level do they recover from this effect? Participants, we got in the English-Arabic direction, we got data from 18 students here from MENAS, most of them flagship students. And also we got data from 20, closer number, Arabic English learners who are learning English as a foreign language in the Syra Academy in Cairo. I did my best to get the data from Sicily students, but this did not work out for practical reasons. To answer the third question, I tried to compare between the low and the intermediate and the advanced. And the numbers, we had 18, 19, and 20. Again, the comparison here wanted only to tell us at which proficiency level they are recovering from this effect. In instruments, we used 3 different tools in 2 directions, the same number and the same set of items. We used written translation, and in the written translation, the students are asked to translate from L1 into L2. So they are given the prompt in English, and then they are asked to translate this into Arabic. And then back home in Egypt, they are doing the other way around. The focus here was on the definite marker in the plural noun that appeared in these sentences. The second task was the error detection and correction, where I gave the students basically a sentence, a context of some sort, and then they were asked to identify the errors in the whole sentence, and then to correct it if they are able to identify it. And the third was the easiest, was the forced choice elicitation task. And the forced choice elicitation, it gives them the options already. One of them is definite, the other one is not, and then they are asked to choose. I have to say a number of things about this design. The first is all the items here were high frequent. I did an analysis of the first 17 chapters of Al-Kitab to generate a long list of noun phrases, very frequent, like books, families, languages, students, teachers, officers. And I incorporated a related condition and an unrelated condition, other items that are not related to the aim of the study. And I did that in that exact sequence, because if I started here by the forced choice elicitation, they might guess the aim of the study. If you started here by the error correction, they might do the same. The solution wants to start first by the written translation, because the subjects have to distribute the resources while translating a sentence on many, many aspects. So there is a possibility not to transfer the practice effect from one task to the other. And I did a pilot study on 10 students here, and one of the basic lessons that I learned is to minimize the number of the translation task. because it's very time consuming. So if you notice here we have 30 related, 25 unrelated, 30 related, 30 unrelated. Here they are only 20 because the translation task takes just a lot of time to translate to this. And here we have the first result. This result basically compares between English-Arabic and Arabic-English learners in the two directions, while they are learning the generic reading case. Remember the case of children like colors. If Sorace and the Tsimpli are true, we should expect to hear wide variations in performance, because Arabic-English are moving to a straightforward configuration, but English-Arabic are not. But when you look at these graphs, you will not notice major differences. The success rate is beyond 25 or close to 25 with the low proficiency, which means all of them are having struggles with learning the generic reading case. Is it because it's an interface case or because it's a language transfer? It's because it's a language transfer. So if they are learning definite or minus, they don't care about that. They just transfer the configuration from L1 into L2. I have to say that here there is a task effect, because the error detection and correction has proven to be the most difficult for students. It was very hard for them to identify errors. So one pattern in the 3 different investigations was the low performance actually in the error detection and correction. What about the specific reading case? The graphs jump up, because once you introduce who or which, الذي or التي, here they establish the specificity case, and that's similar between Arabic and English. And here you can notice that the graphs are higher. What you can see here is in the translation task, the error correction task, and the forced choice elicitation task, more or less the Arabic-English and the English-Arabic are doing the same. They are much better than the first case. And there are statistical differences between the generic and the specific across each proficiency level. I'm not going to go over the statistics in a confusing way. Let's make it straightforward. So the basic point here is generic versus specific, they differ significantly. But the generic in Arabic and the generic in English, they don't. A specific in Arabic and the specific in English, they don't. But generic and the specific here, they differ. Generic and the specific here, they differ. Now, what about the second question, the third question? The third question asked about the improvement that happens over time. The improvement in what? The improvement in the generic reading case with those who are learning Arabic as a foreign language, because this seems to be the problem. If you are tracking the numbers here, it's easily clear that with 2 years of instruction at the intermediate level, the success rate was only 40.6%. So they took 2 years of instruction to understand or to process the semantics of the definite marker, and the acquisition rate was only 40%. And I have an explanation for this, which is the lack of the integration of the semantics of the definite marker in Al-Kitab, the textbook that they are actually studying. I did a comparison between Al-Kitab al-Burtaqali, the revised modern standard Arabic, the revised al-Nuskha al-Munaqqaha, yes, and between Al-Kitab. And it struck me that actually the traditional classroom used these basic differences a lot to talk about the generic versus the specific. But for Al-Kitab, not so much references in teaching the plural nouns. When you check the pages for teaching singular and the plural in Al-Kitab, the focus on the form, how to change from singular into plural. جمع التكسير, the irregular plural in Arabic, and how to change the morphological pattern from this to this. But it does not actually touch on the meaning of the definite article when you teach the plural case. And I think this is one of the reasons, at least, that can justify why the success rate here was not as we expect. Now let's go to the questions first. Question number 1, the generic case, yes, the pattern is the same. For the specific, yes, the pattern is the same. And there are significant differences between the generic and the specific reading cases. Regarding the recovery, it's still only 40% in the intermediate, and it was only 53% in advanced. Regarding that meaning of the definite article, which means they took 3 years and still they are having issues. But at least we know the reason for this. They are transferring the definite marker from L1 into L2. back again to the two hypotheses that we tested in this investigation. The interface hypothesis has been refuted because if you are learning a straightforward configuration or an interface configuration, we end up having the same result. So it's a transfer issue. Now let's go to the second investigation. The second investigation again looked into the case of success, the case of love, the abstract nouns in Arabic. But when you look at the typology of singular nouns, when you first introduce them into the discourse, it's interesting because they are similar in some cases and they are different in others. Let's go over some examples. If you are presenting in Arabic an abstract noun phrase, the configuration is different. If you are presenting a unique noun phrase like inventions, Graham Bell اخترع التليفون, Graham Bell invented the telephone, here they are the same. What about if you are introducing majors, الهندسة والأدب والتاريخ, in the subject distribution, it has to be definite, all of them in Arabic. التاريخ مهم, الجغرافيا سهلة. But if you are shifting into Arabic, these have to carry the definite marker. In English, they don't. The list goes on and on. If you are presenting the masadir in Arabic for the first time in the discourse, they are definite, but in English they don't. Reading a place, reading is indefinite, but here al-qira'a تلعب دورا, reading a place. What I did in this investigation, I have contrasted between the matching case and the mismatching case. Why? To confirm the hypothesis that I supported in the first study. And also, we did the same. We checked the improvement that happens over time when we shift from one proficiency level into the others. For the sake of time, I'm getting all the information here on one graph. Basically, the data, the participants and the instruments were the same design, but different items. So I'm not going to go over these. Now let's go to this graph, because the graph here says the result. So with the case of the mismatching case in terms of definiteness, and the case of the mismatching was lower all the time, across the low, the intermediate, and the high. But the matching case is always higher. You can rephrase these traditionally in terms of the positive transfer and the negative transfer from L1. Because when you go and ask them to translate التاريخ, he will translate it as the history. But it has to stand up as history. But if they are definite in the two different conditions, they will give you the same answer. The second question is already actually this number, because the second question asked about improvement that happens over time. And here it says basically that with 2 years of instruction, the success rate here was 53. It's much better than the first case. And when I checked Al-Kitab, when they are teaching Al-Masadir, all the time they are teaching them in the definite case, not in the indefinite case. So they teach them قرأ يقرأ القراءة, درس يدرس الدراسة. And perhaps the fact that they memorized these in the definite configuration has made this number or this figure a little bit better than the first case. Questions answered. The first case is that yes, it's very hard to acquire the mismatching configuration, and it's very easy to learn the matching configuration. Regarding improvement, yes, here we have a much better case of improvement than the plural nouns case. Now let's shift to the problematic one, which is the idafa construction, because the idafa has been known for being a very difficult construction. I'll end up saying that no, it's less hard than others. So with the case of the idafa construction, it raises a number of interesting questions, because if you are learning Arabic and you start from English, your task can be summarized or elaborated as follows. You are moving from multiple noun phrase configurations in English, and you are rendering all these only in one, right? Because as we said, that the English language is permissible of many, many noun phrases. So the of construction is one. The director of the school director. The shirt of the boy's shirt. Reading books, book reading. So the English language is permissible, right? So you have multiple configurations. And your task in learning the idafa construction is to know how to map all these multiple configurations into only one. The guys in Egypt are suffering with the other half of the picture, because they have only one canonical configurations, but they need to map these in these multiple configurations in English. Maybe as a learning mechanism, those guys, their task seems to be easier because they're rendering all these only in one. But those guys are rendering only one into many. So it seems like the task of those guys should be easier. We will see that the task is difficult in both directions. Again, I identified the acquisition of the idafa construction in terms of two things, two features. The first is the head complement ordering, the sequence, because the school director, mudir al-madrasa, you have to start with the director first. In English, the school, you are starting by the school. So are they able to change the ordering or not? Second is definiteness. And definiteness is interesting because in English, once you change the configuration, the position of the definite article, it changes. It jumps from one place to the other. The school director, but the director of the school. Here you have two there, right? Two cases of that. With the school director, you have only one. So I operationalized the acquisition of the idafa construction in terms of these two cases. Two questions were asked. The first case, at the initial state of L2 learning with low proficiency learners, are they transferring the noun phrase configurations in terms of the head complement ordering and definiteness from L1 into L2, or they fluctuate? By fluctuate, I mean they fluctuate back and forth between multiple noun phrase configurations. The same thing. Here we will notice that the number here is different because I got this data last year. That's why I got like 50% last year in the summertime, and then I continue with this year. That's why I ended up by having 40 here. Here we ended up by having 20. And the second question is asked about the effect of focus on form instruction as elaborated by Ellis. Why? Because we know that the idafa construction is one of the very few cases in Arabic where we go and focus on the form in every single class. When Ansari step into the class, he will go and teach, guys, we have, this is what idafa, and then you have to use the definite article before the second noun, not before the first one. That's very common in our practice for teaching Arabic as a foreign language. The fact that the previous literature has not given us a study about the effect of focus on form made me try to answer this question too, if it is effective or not. And also the numbers 15, 15, 15, all of them were from our school here. Let's see the first graph. I'm highlighting here the differences between head complement ordering and head complement definiteness. These graphs tell us if you provided a cue or a prompt in L1 in the translation task, 87% will render exactly the same configuration in L2 from L1 in the translation task. And 35% will not. So the majority are just transferring the form from L1 into L2. But still here we have a big question about those guys. Why those guys realized this difference and those guys did not. What about definiteness? More or less the same pattern. 85% will add the definite article exactly in the same position in the queue that you used. But still 30% are aware, we never use the definite marker before the first one. We only use it before the second one. What about the Arabic-English direction? The other way around. More or less, here the ordering became a little bit less. 17% were able to map the idafa construction from Arabic into multiple configurations in English. But still 74% made the same mistake or the same error by rendering the same configuration. The same one happened here in definiteness. We never get an exact pattern about these two different communities of learners. But the pattern is the same, that they are transferring the form from their L1 into their L2. Again, this is the case that's similar and this is the case that's different. I tested one of the most difficult ones, I have to say, which is reading books. When you see reading books is useful. In this case, it's indefinite in Arabic, in English, but it has to be definite in Arabic because you change this into the idafa construction. So it has to be reading the books. When you render reading books is useful from English into Arabic, it has to be reading the books because you transfer this into the idafa construction, right? And then the pattern here was 99% followed the same sequence, which is expected, and only 5% were able to add the definite marker. For those guys, 75% and only 15%. So again, the basic pattern here is they are transferring this into the second language from their L1 into their L2. Perhaps because this case is one of the most difficult ones. Because first, they should know the masdar. Second, they should know that the masdar here, when you add one more noun, the masdar is the head, and the other noun is the complement. And then you have to add the definite marker here in between. That's a very tough task for them. What about improvement over time regarding the idafa construction, the focus on form? I'm saying that it is the best. If you are contrasting between the plural case, the singular case, and the idafa are much, much better. Because we focus on the idafa, but we never focus on the semantics of the definite marker in our Arabic classes. And the same happens with the singular case. But with the idafa, we do. That's why here we have a better pattern for 64.5 for the intermediate students. Now the questions, they transfer or they fluctuate. It's clear that they transfer, they don't fluctuate. The main pattern is fluctuation. Question 2. It seems like here is much better. And I think here I did only 2 tasks, which are the translation and the forced choice. I did not use the error detection with this one. If you used the error detection here with this one, perhaps the pattern might be better than 64.5. It could. But only here 2 tasks. The average is across 2 tasks, and here the average is across 3 tasks. Now, let's try to couch all these results in a broader framework. We know that at least we have 3 debatable cases in second language acquisition about the initial state of L2 learning. The first is the full transfer hypothesis, as outlined by Sprouse and Schwartz, 1996. And basically, they argue that your task as a second language learner starts with transferring your knowledge from L1 to L2. The developmental view says no. They actually make different errors when they come from different first languages. And the processability theory by Peinman is one of the sub-schools here. The third is a combination of both, actually. That's Zabel 1980, and then Rebecca Rast recently, 2010. They basically argue that they have to reach a specific level of proficiency, and then they start to transfer or not. But the results that I have supports this one. They never fluctuated, and they never waited until one point in proficiency to start to transfer. They transfer from day one. And again, if they are learning a straightforward case, or if they are learning an interface case, this does not matter. And the basic conclusion is the typological proximity or distance between L1 and L2 are very basic determinants of second language learning. And we need to highlight these in our L2 classes. I'm saying here that what I documented are mainly tendencies. It is not 100%, because we find 75, still you have 25% who do it right. And this is another area of research for individual cases. What made those guys sensitive to the differences between L1 and L2, and the majority did not, if they were in the same classroom setting. Very recently, Donna Lardier presented a new framework for understanding how second language acquisition works, and she distinguished between feature selection versus reassembly. The basic distinction here, if the 2 languages have the same feature, which is definiteness, second language learners are going to reassemble the meaning to the form. What about if the two languages don't have that form, like minus article languages? Someone who is learning Arabic, and he comes from Persian, or maybe from Russian or from Korean. She said they will go and select that feature from the UG store. That's still a universal grammar approach. Again, for the idafa construction, as I said, if you are moving from multiple to one or one to multiple, both are hard. This does not make any sense, because the task of L2 learners in the 2 directions are different. Those guys need to develop metalinguistic awareness to know that multiple configurations in English are rendered in one. And those guys need to understand that the idafa construction in Arabic, MSA guys in Cairo, are mapped into multiple noun phrases in English. When the head complement ordering and the head complement definiteness combine together to create a matching case, there is a lot of positive transfer. But when they combine together to create a mismatching case, they just transfer this into L2 and they make problems. Finally, I have to say that if you are thinking of definiteness, of the distinction between superset and subset grammar, there was an argument that if you are moving, let's explain what's a superset and the subset grammar first means. In a language like Arabic, when you use the definite marker for the specific reading case and for the generic reading case, this is a case of superset grammar because you have the two cases. With a case like English, where the with the plural case is only used with the specific, this is a subset. There was an argument that moving from this to this should be easier. But it seems like if they are moving from a superset grammar to a subset grammar, or from a subset grammar to a superset grammar, their task is the same. Charles Yang tried to tell us basically what the second language learning task is. And he says here you are starting by L2, and then you start by S0, the initial state, and then you end up by the ultimate ST. And the debate, as I just said, was around the initial state. And from what I did, at least for noun phrases, here your initial state, if you are learning Arabic and you come from a plus article language, you are mainly transferring. But if you are learning Arabic and you come from a minus article language, you are mainly fluctuating. And this is the result that Tanya Ionin documented about the minus article languages. So the initial state is not the same from what I can say now. It is not the same across the different languages. Now the implications, the pedagogical implications. The pedagogical implications will run into two different types or two different categories. The first is textbook development, and the second is the classroom activities. For investigation number one, we need to highlight the semantics of the definite marker in textbooks. And we don't have enough time to go over to the orange book because it said something about that case, but Al-Kitab did not. Regarding the singular noun phrases, Al-Kitab touches, I have to say, because I looked into the parts where it's talking about the singular noun cases like Masadir and other cases, but we still need to present a detailed typology like abstract, concrete, how they behave in Arabic and English. Regarding the idafa construction, we have to teach our students, and the textbooks have to do the same, how to make this mapping between from one to many or many to one, and I have to see Al-Kitab does a good job in that case. But not every single possibility is covered in Al-Kitab. And the contrastive analysis in this case will not hurt. Regarding the structured input activities, I'm taking the framework of Van Patten. He presented a nice framework that starts with understanding the wrong processing mechanism or strategy that our L2 learners use, and then we need to switch it off, and then to build new form meaning mappings. And how to do this for him, we need to do this but what he called the structured input activities. I'm here listing some of them. The first is to ask the students to read a context, and then they have to choose between options and alternatives. Should it surface in the definite or the indefinite configuration? Second is to ask them to identify and correct the errors while they are learning the definite marker. So when you are teaching them the plurals in Arabic, you don't only teach them kitab kutub, but you have to jump into kutub mufida or al-kutub mufida. So they are choosing between kutub mufida or al-kutub mufida. A third case is how to express X in NB configurations. I checked some online tools, and I was impressed that Dr. Sherry had an example of this one with the idafa construction. So let's click on this and see if the internet will take us to that part. Okay, here we go. No? Yeah. Okay, here you go. So what's in here is a very good example of the input processing model, because here they ask them to change this configuration from L1 into L2, and then the website gives them already feedback about the answer. And what you will see here are different cases of noun phrase configurations, and then they are asked to render all these multiple ones into the canonical one in Arabic. This is a good one because it works along the same guidelines for Venn pattern. When you have multiple possibilities and then you are working one item at a time to make the connection between form and between meaning. Why these activities are very important? Because they should help our students to convert the input, which is the data that they are surrounded with, into intake, which is how much of that language that we hear every day makes its way into our developing linguistic system. I have to say that I have 3 weaknesses in my framework. The first is I used only 3 instruments: the error detection, forced choice, and translation. And I focused only on written production. I did not focus on spoken production. And I did not control for the input, because other people who are trying to characterize the initial state, they try to control for the input that learners are exposed to, and then they measure the output and see what happens in between. I did not do this for practical considerations. But at least I contributed in 3 different things. Number 1, I documented some aspects in the acquisition of the definite marker in noun phrases, something that Howary did not like. Now it's clear. And I contributed into the debate about the initial state of L2 learning. And I'm highlighting here the rule of accuracy versus fluency. Because one of the weaknesses, I'm not seeing weaknesses, one of the debates in the communicative approach is we make them speak, but they don't have the definite marker as far as the noun phrase configurations are concerned. And this actually will open up new future questions. I'm highlighting here just very basic ones. It seems like the metalinguistic awareness should play a role in converting the declarative knowledge of knowing the differences into procedural knowledge when they go and they choose and underline or produce it in an accurate way. And I have noticed that, and Dr. Sherry here and Dr. Samira will say the same, and Dr. Adil, that linguistics students who are doing Arabic, they are the best every year. They know these very small things, even if they have never been exposed to Arabic before, but perhaps because they have that knowledge of these kind of small things. And also, very recently, I am in contact with Rebecca Rast about the varieties of initial language learning in second language acquisition in Europe. They are working on the same framework, but with 5 foreign languages. All of them are learning Polish, and they come from 5 different languages. So we are in contact to see if we are able to integrate Arabic and the University of Arizona into the Villa program. And I have to say that the future might make me test the effectiveness of the processing and instructional model by the different activities that I highlighted some of them. At the end, I should thank a lot of people. First, thank the committee members, and thank those who helped with the data collection. For the English-Arabic side, I should thank Muhammad Ansari. He did a great job in doing that. And I should thank the flagship Arabic students. For the English side, I should thank Mr. Mahdi Ibrahim and Mr. Sharif Farouk in Cairo for facilitating the data from Cairo in that direction. And I think at that point, I need to stop. Thank you very much.